true originality is very, very, very rare, more rare than gold. Saul Rand, the late great American graphic designer, pioneer in design, he said, like, don't try to be original, just try to be good, because being good is really difficult. Everybody's so fascinated by trying to be original. You know what? If you do something that's good and you've learned how to do this over time, you might add to the canon of what original content there was.
Hi everyone, I'm Felix. Welcome to today's ADP List Leadership Series with Christo. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hi Felix, I just want to feel like I got to pose like that picture, so here I am.
Thank you so much, Chris. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce Christo, CEO and Chief Strategist of Blind and the founder of the Futur. Chris is obviously no stranger to a lot of you here. He's a visionary who has transformed the design industry through his innovative approach to education and business. An Emmy Award-winning designer and director, he has empowered creatives around the world by blending his artistic vision and business acumen. Chris' company, The Futur, has set a bold vision of what he calls the 1 billion mission, and we're going to dive into that later, which provides invaluable resources to help creative professionals build successful careers. So please join me in welcoming Chris. Chris, thanks for joining the show again. And, you know, we met 2 years ago, I believe, on ADP List the first time, and you also had graciously, accepted our invitation and came here to share some really, great insights. Now we're back here, a lot of change. But I want to start with you today. I know that, from what we've read online, that you had a, challenging upbringing as a refugee from Vietnam. You're born in Saigon, and your family has fled the country when you're young. Obviously, you are now in the US. And I know that, from what we've read as well, you've always felt like a cultural outsider struggling to find your identity. And your parents saw education as a gateway to success, and I believe it's been quite a journey for you. What do I need to know about you today and your earliest years to understand the life that you have went on and the person you came to be today?
That's a big question to begin the conversation with, Felix. I'll do my best. What do you need to know about me? Well, I think you need to know that I'm an immigrant, and so I fall under the trappings of most immigrants coming to a place like the United States. The desire to do better. Education is a gateway to a better life. And the stereotypical Asian parents' expectations of you doing something legitimate, that you have to suppress your dreams and your desires to do something that is stable. It's not because they want to punish you, it's because they care and they care deeply. But they're working with an operating system from an old country, from a different time and era. Just like I don't want to impose on my kids what worked for me, because it's a whole new world and we get to do whatever it is that we want. The other thing you probably need to know about me is I'm painfully awkward and shy. Brian Collins says I'm an opportunistic introvert. He calls me like an ambivert, and says, I don't know why you're telling everyone you're an introvert because you're doing everything the extroverts do. So I don't know. But I will tell you, I am socially awkward. I don't know how to have conversations with people. I wasn't that guy. And I've had this wonderful journey of self-discovery, learning to find my voice. And I get to share this with the world.
Wow. Thank you so much, Chris. You would not come across as an introvert, but I think from the sense of that, it feels like that. I mean, considering the journey that you've been through. I'm curious, we have not spoke in 2 years after that big interview. What's been exciting for you lately? What has been some topics professionally or personally has been fascinating you, has been interesting and exciting for you?
Well, since last we spoke, I went on a European tour after the pandemic, and that was wonderful. What people don't realize is I hate doing talks, but I love doing workshops. I like seeing people. And if there's common interest in how I can serve people, I feel like at my most self. And I feel so joyful in that so many different people came out to see us and to attend one of our workshops. And I got to feel that energy and that love and the excitement from the community. And that was really awesome for me. So I continued down that endeavor to do more in-person events. And whenever I can, I try and organize something like that. But what has changed the most is the emergence of AI as a tool, and it is a tool. And a lot of people in the creative industry are threatened by this. And I think there's good reason for them to, because it is an incredibly disruptive force that will create job displacement on scales we've never seen before. And I always think of it like this. When the wave comes in and it pulls back out, you get to see who's wearing swim trunks. So we have to learn how to swim here. Otherwise, we'll get swept out.
Wow. Thank you so much, Chris. We're going to dive, I think, a lot on our conversation today on AI. But you had such a fascinating journey. You obviously sound like an adventurer because you went on the whole entire European tour. Have you been to Asia? I mean, have you done an Asian tour or am I just not aware yet?
I have gone and spoken in Asia before, but I'm always curious if there's demand for it and how to organize this. I've spoken at 4 different universities in China pre-pandemic. Right. I've done workshops in Taiwan multiple times, and I've been to Japan. I've been to the Philippines doing workshops there and doing public speaking, but not on one continuous leg, and in the same way that we did with Europe.
Wow. So, we do quite a bit of in-person events and meetups as well across the globe. So hopefully we can have you at most of these events, if you're traveling or it's just around the corner of your block. But I want to touch a little bit about your journey and your career. That's where we're really starting with. You tweeted something, I think it was maybe a year ago, that you said something along the line that, I'm 51. You started YouTube at 42, got serious on Instagram at 46, and now your YouTube subscribers is at 2.1 million, IG followers around 800,000, LinkedIn is about 400,000, and Twitter about 100,000. And you said that I did it, and you can too. What did you learn from that journey, and why do you think you made it work?
Ooh, what did I learn from this journey? Well, I got to tell you something. Deciding to make content, reluctantly agreeing to do this has transformed my lives in so many dimensions I can't even begin to tell you. So pardon me if I sound so effusive and so emphatic when I say, like, everybody should be creating content. It's one of these things where if you discover gold in the hills and there's an abundant source of it, an unlimited source of it, you try and tell as many of your friends as possible, like, there's gold over there. You just really have to go and just bring a barrel, empty pockets, and go and scrape up that stuff. And I want to make this point. There's a gentleman, he's a pastor, and he runs a mega church called Mosaic. His name is Erwin McManus. I got to meet him at an event that I was speaking at. He's a powerful speaker. Now, I knew of him beforehand, but I didn't ever really see him speak. And he has an incredible way of telling stories, a mastery over his voice. And he told me, I think fairly modestly and matter-of-factly, I can give a TED-level talk by 18 minutes on any subject you want with about 30 minutes of preparation. And I believe this because he's been a pastor for 40 plus years. I think, okay, I'm looking at him now, observing and admiring him 40 years into his journey. Yeah. And I think to myself, man, I'm 10 years into my public speaking journey. What would I be like in 30 years? Well, first of all, I'll be 80 years old, ancient. But I kept thinking about that and thinking, I started at 42. What if I started at 32? What if I was 20 years deep into this right now? How much better would I be? Not trying to be the best in the world, but relative to myself, I would be at least 2 times better. But I don't think it works on a linear scale. I think I'd be like 4x better or something. Yeah. And I keep thinking about that, right? And I share that story because many of you are not even 25 or 30 years old yet. And so I think the thing I've learned in this whole journey is the reward is so worth the work, and it is painful. I'm not going to delude you. Yeah. It is painful. It's excruciating. It's losing sleep at night thinking about the talk, and it's like walking around like a zombie trying to rehearse and remember what it is you want to say. It's bombing on stage. It's having the cold sweats and an upset stomach, all that stuff. But that's the price of entry to get this thing that I think I've discovered for myself, which is to find your voice, to be able to move people physically, spiritually, emotionally with the power of your voice and the energy in the vibration, the frequency that you send out. Wow. And I think that's really wonderful. So I say to everybody, if you're contemplating on starting, just start already. My wife asked me this question last night, and I gave her an answer, and she's like, why are you such a smart ass? It was a genuine answer. She asked me, how did you get so good at speaking, honey? Like overnight, you just did this. She's like, overnight, you become so good at speaking. And you can make money just using your mouth. And I just never even thought that a person could do that. And I said to her, overnight? Babe, 10 years is not overnight. It didn't come from nowhere. But she says, but the minute you decided to start, it was great. I'm like, no, it wasn't. Now, what people don't know is I've been doing public speaking for 10 years, but I was teaching at that point probably for 13 years prior to that.
Wow.
So I started teaching when I was 26, I think, 5 years out of school, 27. And so you put in the reps, and this is the work that is invisible to everyone, the work that no one sees, notices, or cares about, that you don't even talk about. You just do the work. You show up, you work with a bunch of creative students from advertising, design, and illustration. You help them manifest their vision, and you learn to be able to react and respond to things in real time, to be able to solve problems, conceptual problems, emotional problems, and you just work through that. That's the work that people don't see. So I just tell everybody, you know what? And the answer that I told my wife was, you just take the first step. She goes, come on, babe, give me the real answer. I said, no, it's the first step. You have to take that first step, right?
Yeah.
And I give her this story, and she goes, yeah, of course, of course. So last night, we were talking in the green room.
Yeah.
I have a studio. It's detached from the house. So I went downstairs into the studio at about 10 p.m. last night to mostly just shut down my computer. But when I got into the studio, I went to wake up my computer, go shut it down. I saw a message. I'm like, let me respond to this message. And I open up something else. And then an hour and a half later, I'm there, and I finished doing a new thumbnail, and then I shut it down. I go upstairs. The reason why I tell you this story is because it is a drag to walk down to the studio to say, I'm going to go do work today. But if I just said to myself, I'm just going to go down and shut down the computer, and whatever I feel like doing, I do. And whenever I stop feeling it, I stop doing it. Oh. And so I do it with joy. But if I went downstairs and said, I need to finish these thumbnails, I would have a lot of negative energy that would carry with me. And so almost with everything in life, just take that first step, see how you feel, and then think, do I want to take the next step? And what does that feel like? And if that feels good and you're energized by it, take the next step. And it's true with public speaking. The first thing is to volunteer, to say, hey, you have an event coming up. Can I speak at your event? Right. And then they say yes, and then you have a panic attack. But the first step is to say, I'm interested in doing this. And then it's like, how does one start a talk? Then you read books and you watch videos, you make notes, and you stress out, and you get very anxious, and you compare yourself, and you have imposter syndrome. And then you actually show up and you mess up, and then people don't laugh at your jokes, and people are a little confused, and you walk away feeling like a total loser. Except for the next morning you realize, I didn't die. I'm okay. And you know what? There are 3 things I could do better. And then I rejoice. I'm like, wow, that's an opportunity to get better. Oh, an opportunity I would not have seen had I not volunteered to speak. Oh. All right, there's my answer.
Such a powerful answer. And I love how you take almost the moments just from last night, and, you know, every moment that in your life, it almost becomes like a lesson. And I think one of the things that I have so many questions, but one of the questions that I was so curious about when you sort of relate your content creation journey, you know, with gold. I mean, why would you say that, right? Like, is content creation really something that you would encourage everyone to look into? Is there a specific type of person that should be into content creation, or how do you look at that from a point of view that to say that it is gold?
Yeah, a great follow-up question, Felix. Thanks for asking that.
Yeah.
Your content creation is gold on a number of levels. I speak about it like figuratively and then also literally. Now, gold is only valuable because it's a finite resource in the planet. And it's the most rare element, I think, on the planet, gold. And that's why it has such value. And that means that only so much of it can be extracted from the earth before our supply is deleted. Okay, so if we think about it like that, all right, that's not a lot. Okay, fine. Now, the reason why content creation is gold is because we have the ability to learn about ourselves, to be able to tell our story so that we're more confident when we present. We know our own history, and we can share it with the other people, which empowers them to say, like, you know what? Somebody like me is doing this thing. So we ask ourselves, why not me? This is the whole idea of inclusion, right? And something that I'd never really thought about up until the last couple of years. Because when I was growing up, there weren't a lot of people who looked like me on the other side of the TV screen, on the other side of the newspaper or the magazines. It was always usually white European folks. Yeah. But I never thought that there was this difference between me and them, because I just looked at us, if a human can do it, I can do it. if a human can achieve this, if a human can design this, then I'm a human. We have that in common. So most of my professional career, I never operated as thinking of myself as an Asian-owned minority business. Yeah. I was just in the field of motion design, making commercials and music videos. So I needed to compete with every person who describes himself that way. And it's not until I start making YouTube content that people will send me messages, and I'm a little confused by it. They say, you know, I feel so seen and heard right now. I'm like, how come? Was it something I said? They're like, no, it's just because of you. And I'm still confused. Like, what do you mean because of me? Because I never thought an Asian person who looks like you, who talks like you, could do this thing. And you give me hope. So for anybody who's out there who's feeling left out of the party, maybe for some, I give them that sense that we can do this. And I'm finding a remarkable connection and kinship with people of color, Black and brown people. And it's so exciting to me. You know, I was at the airport going through security.
Yeah.
And this gentleman who's like checking my bags, he goes, "You're into hip hop, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I am a fan." And he just nodded, and I nodded. And I think it was because of what I was wearing and how I was wearing my cap too, you know, a little to the side. And he's like, "I get a vibe from you." And I like that. Okay, so it's gold because we can learn about ourselves. We can learn how to communicate and articulate better. We can become more self-aware. We can accept ourselves more. And then that will lead to self-confidence. And then think about everything that you do in your life, every relationship you have, including the one with yourself, where you love yourself more. Do your relationships improve? With my partner, my wife, with my children, with my business associates, with my sponsors, like people who sponsored the channel, with you folk, when you come up to me? Am I a better person because I've learned to love myself? And I would argue with anybody, I'll die on that hill, that the answer is emphatically yes. Wow. And here's the beautiful part. Here's the literal part for all the Asians who are still listening to that parent talk track in their mind. You got to make money doing this. Okay. I'll give you a track, like a history here. So Blind started in 1995. The most we ever billed in 1 year was about, I think, $6.8 million. We almost got to 7 million, not quite. I was like, oh, almost there. And that was the height. I think that was 2007. Okay. Now the Futur has been in business now for 8 years. Now we at our height are at $4.5 million, but I see no potential ceiling for how big we can grow. In the short time that we've been in business, I've had 2 venture capitalists approach me, 3, not including, 2 official venture capitalists, another just business owner said, "We want to invest in your business. Can we give you money to do what you're doing because we believe in what you're doing, not only on a business level, but on a spiritual level?" Wow. I've never had anybody approach me as Blind as a service company who wanted to invest in the company itself because they know it's a dead-end business. But they know the people who can command attention, who can direct eyeballs and to move people, there's value there. There's value in the library that we've built up in terms of the intellectual property. There's value in me public speaking. I keep it, there's no secret about this, but I get speaking fees of $30,000 to speak. And that is more than a lot of professional speakers. Not nearly as much as some other celebrity speakers, but I don't have a best-selling book. I'm not a New York Times best-selling author. I'm just a guy who used his voice and learned to communicate that and share my ideas with people. And people from all over the world feel this deep connection. My podcast producer shared this data with me, which I'm going to post about pretty soon, which is, he's like, "I was just looking at your charts. Did you know that the Futur podcast ranks in the top 20 in over 35 countries?" Now, he produces lots of podcasts for lots of different big name creators I can't tell you about, but they're like celebrity business people. Right. He goes, "Nobody has that." He goes, "You have this international coalition of people, and we're even number 1 in some countries," which blows my mind. Countries I don't even know, like, they listen to podcasts there? Well, that's pretty cool.
That is.
So is there money in this? Is it gold, Felix? I think there is.
There is. I think there certainly is. You know, I've been following your contents, and, you know, I myself post some contents as well every now and then. And there's just a lot of, I think you get a lot of opportunities by voicing yourself, by voicing your ideas. And I think it's exactly, you know, what you say. And I want to touch on the point where you talk about storytelling and your wife's question as to how do you get so good. Did storytelling, come to you naturally? Was it a process where you kind of got better because of content creation? What came first, right? Being good at storytelling and then going to content creation, or was it something they learned throughout the way? And also, what makes a good story if someone were to tell online? Because there's just millions of posts every single day. What do you think is a good story? Yeah.
Okay. Multi-part question. Again, very good question. Okay. Here's the thing with storytelling. We were all born natural storytellers because stories are the operating system of the human brain. That's an Eric and Mead's quote there. It means that we learn about the world through stories. All of our memories are baked on emotion and story. Yeah. And if you can think back to when you were like 5 or 6 years old, when you've developed language skills and you experienced life, and you wanted to share something that happened to you with your buddy Timmy or Jenny, and you'd go like, you'd come over, oh my God, you won't believe it. This and this happened. This dog chased me and this and that. And then I climbed this and then this happened. And we're natural storytellers. And then they're like reliving the experience with you because you're telling it full-throated, reliving the experience. And you're sweating just telling the story again. Your heart is racing and you can barely contain yourself because you're short of breath. But something really weird happens, says Felix. We lose the ability to tell stories. We lose our ability to be creative and to imagine things that don't exist. I remember when my boys were really young, I bought them a die-cast car. It was about this big.
Yeah.
Okay. And my son, I think he was like 2 years old, was playing with a car. And the doors open on the car. It has operable doors. And he tried to put his foot inside the car. He wanted to climb inside the car. But his foot was bigger than the door, but he's still trying to get inside that car because he doesn't understand spatial relationships and mass. He doesn't understand that. He's only 2 years old. But I looked at him and I was marveling that in the mind of a child, even though he's 20 times bigger than the car, he still wants to get inside the car. And that's the beauty of imagination. So I think something happens and the two go together. We're told, stop talking, slow down. I don't have time for this right now. Don't tell me that story. Or whatever it is, like, hey, just take a deep breath. You're hyperventilating. And that child has so much energy. And if you do this enough times, children are really smart. There's a risk and reward situation they're going through. They would rather be rewarded and instead of being punished. So you tell people, raise your hand before you speak. It's not your turn yet. I don't have time to hear that. And so we start to lose this skill and it's educated out of us, creativity, imagination, and storytelling. The late Sir Ken Robinson talks about this. We don't grow into creativity. We grow out of creativity. It's stripped away from us. And it's a powerful idea. Okay. So I think all creative people are the children who survived this process into adulthood who are not really good at listening to adults telling them what to do.
Wow.
They just survived.
I relate to that so much. And I think, the quote that you mentioned about, we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it. That is something that, is so rarely talked about, but it's so true. And I want to touch on this topic of creativity because you talk about being in an environment that allows you to be creative when you're young and then you grow out of it. There's a question that goes around and I'm very curious about what you think, which is, do you think that creative people are born or can they be nurtured? Right? Because we see that some kids, maybe they look at the world differently. And some kids, they look at the world, in a way that they want to look at it. So is creativity born or is it trained?
Okay. I'm going to answer a question, but I didn't answer your first question. If you don't mind, I'm going to answer your first question. Okay.
Yeah.
Because we talked about stories. And so now we're like, no one knows how to tell the story. They don't have the emotion. They don't have the same energy because we've learned how to be polite in polite society. And so we don't do that anymore. We've lost that ability to a degree. And there's definitely a story structure. When I was teaching sequential design at Art Center at Otis College of Art and Design, I have to help students learn how to tell a story. So stories have some simple components, and I've read books, I've watched videos on this stuff, and the simplest way I could describe it is 3 words, okay? So if you have a pen and paper, you just need to write this down. Every good story needs to have these 3 things. Without it, there's no story. It needs to have a character, that has a want and there's an obstacle. There's a character that has a want and there's an obstacle. Okay? And if you think of every story, and we look at like the Disney classics, what does Pinocchio want? Pinocchio is a really interesting character. You have to have an interesting character that has to have character flaws and desires, and they're not perfect beings. So Pinocchio wants to be a real boy. That's his want, because he's a wooden boy. And what makes him interesting is because puppets aren't real. They don't have thoughts and feelings. But for some reason, because Pinocchio was under this pine tree and it was carved out of this tree that has magical properties, he becomes this sentient boy. But Pinocchio is a little mischievous and he tells lies. Those are his flaws. So he has his want. And if he could just become a boy, there would be no story. There'd be no story. And so there's the obstacle that wooden boys don't become real boys. And so there's all this conflict that exists in the story with him and his father, his maker. And there's this love and there's this kind of distancing. It's a sad story, but a beautiful story at the same time. Romeo and Juliet, a classic story from Shakespeare. Who's the character? Well, Romeo and Juliet. What do they want? They want true love. But they can't get it. Why? Because the obstacle exists that their families hate each other. The Montagues and the Capulets, they hate each other. And so now there's conflict again. So every story has a character, want, and an obstacle. The more interesting the character, the more flaws, the more nuance, the more interesting the story becomes. Like recently we're watching Dune, and it's like done really well at the box office. And Paul Atreides is a beautiful character because he's flawed. He's got all this power. He comes from a noble house. Everything's great. But with this kind of power that he has, it becomes intoxicating. And a lot of people are going to die because of this.
Right. Wow.
So now we want to love the character, but he's walking that razor's edge now between becoming the hero and the villain. And I think that makes for the most interesting characters. Like no really good character in fiction is purely evil or purely good. The evil characters have traits of goodness in them. And the good characters have traits of badness in them.
Wow.
So when we create characters, we need to think about that. So when we think about how to use this in storytelling or even marketing, we can think, who's the character that I want to serve? Who is my ideal client avatar? And if you create a generic, very broad description, it's kind of like you're making a really bad movie or bad story. No one cares. But you know what? The avatar that you create, this character that has all these flaws, has a want. They have fears, they have hopes, they have dreams, they have desires. And you can write copy to them. So when I write stories on social, or I'm telling stories on the stage, I think about that person. I think about what they're feeling. I think about their fears and what's making them anxious. And I speak to that. I talk about the pain so they feel first seen and heard. And they're like, okay, I think I might be able to trust you because you might have walked in my shoes before. The mistake that a lot of public speakers make is they forget and they pretend they don't have flaws. They show you a perfect home and a perfect life and all business decisions working out for them. Well, no one lives like that. Not even the person telling that story. So we're so careful to curate and edit and Photoshop everything out, so to speak, that we're no longer relatable to people. So if you want to be an interesting character in your own story, if you want to market and serve people like real people, you have to understand who the character is, what their want is, and the obstacle that's preventing them from getting what it is that they want. Solve that problem. Tell that story, and you'll connect with them.
Well, that is such a powerful framework in 3 words: character, want, and conflict. And it sort of reminds, obstacle. And it sort of reminds me of the, there's a longer version of that. I think they call it The Hero's Journey by Joseph.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's, it kind of goes around and, there's a moment of death and realization, and you kind of resurrect from that, and you become a better character from it. Do
you want to hear the long version, or do you just want the short? That was a short version. I was trying to make it simple. I could tell you the long version.
I would love to hear a little bit of a longer version. If you would love to, share a little bit more details as well, because I think this is really helpful for a lot of people.
Okay, you can ask as many follow-up questions. I don't want to bore you or our audience, so I will tell you the long version. Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, a hero with 1,000 faces, is the person who starts to notice these patterns within mythology and stories that have endured over the test of time. Why do some stories carry with us 100 or 1,000 or thousands of years later? They seem to follow a very specific pattern, this kind of thing he called the hero's journey. Yeah. So there's the character and live in the ordinary world, one that's very relatable to all of us. And then there's a herald, and the herald comes in to interrupt that person's life, and there's a call to adventure. Like, join the army or go on a space adventure, which is Star Wars, by the way.
Yeah.
And then there's the initial, what they call the refusal of the call. And there's always the reluctance. The Seven Samurai, Akira Kurosawa's film, masterpiece, same thing. It's like, I'm here to recruit samurai to defend against these marauders for this village. They're like, no, we're all going to die. This is a dumb endeavor. This is not going to work out well. There's always the reluctant character, a hero, who's asked to help to do something or called to help, but they just don't want to do it. There's already conflict. And then the character meets a mentor. And the mentor says, we can do this. You can do it. So in Mulan, it's Mushu. Mushu's like, great, Mulan, let's go. I'm sorry, because there's this initial idea that she has to join the army, but can't because she's a woman and she's not. There's all okay. Anyways, so there's a refusal to call. The mentor helps to bring the character, and it's called crossing the threshold, where they leave the ordinary world and they enter the new world. So the classic is Star Wars, which George Lucas is a big fan of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell has said, if I recall correctly, George Lucas is one of my best students.
Wow.
And if you look at Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, it follows this perfectly. Luke dreams about being in outer space, right? He wonders about the adventurous life. And then until he meets Obi-Wan, he then realizes he can leave this planet and go explore the stars. He wants to learn about his origins, his father, Anakin Skywalker. Yeah. There's a longing here, and he's kind of an orphan raised by his uncle and his aunt. Okay, it's beautiful, right? So you cross the threshold, and you go on a series of adventures. There's what they would refer to as trials and tribulations, little tests, and then you grow, but then there's a relapse. So it's called the resurrection and the relapse, or the relapse and the resurrection. Until a certain point, the hero learns a valuable lesson, discovers something new, and brings back to share with his fellow person. So in this way, it's like he's fighting, he's going through the Death Star, he saves Princess Leia, and then in his final mission in the X-Wing, he flies in and he hears the voice of his mentor, Obi-Wan Kenobi. He says, Luke, use the Force, your eyes betray you. And so he takes off the guidance system, and they're like, what are you doing, Luke? He's like, oh, use the Force, Luke. And he's trusting in his teaching. And he fires that one shot that goes into that little vent and it blows up the 1 weak spot, saves the day.
Wow.
That's the hero's journey.
Thanks for sharing that. It's such a, detailed, I think, breakdown of the three words, that you shared earlier, which I think it really inspires a lot of people. It almost feels like we're all in our hero's journey. It almost all feels like we're all in the adventure. We're all going through trials and tribulations, and we almost are living the hero's journey on a day-to-day basis. Which is interesting you mentioned about George Lucas, because we have $1 million box office and we have $1 billion box office, which is where Star Wars is. What is the difference? What is the difference if they're using the same formula, or maybe they're not? But does this storytelling method of the hero's journey actually makes the difference, or is there something that helps the story to stand out even more?
It makes a big difference, and there are formulas, and they follow the exact formula. I would argue the more creative they try to be and not follow the formula, the less likely it is to succeed.
Wow.
Because if we say like 1,000, 2,000, 10,000 years of human history, and the stories that endure have these common traits, and the other stories we don't talk about anymore, then we're kind of foolish to say, well, after 10,000 years of experimentation, I'll be the one who changes that formula. And I'll tell you something. It used to be that when I was going to art center, art house films, these small limited release, small theaters where you can watch these art house experimental French Nouveau, whatever it is. You're like, whoa, okay, let's go watch this. And afterwards, you're like, I'm not sure what I was watching. There were plot threads that went nowhere. There's characters I couldn't understand, and there was an unsatisfying resolution to the story, or I didn't see the character change. I didn't learn anything. So when people adhere to the formula, it does really well. The creativity comes in changing the variables. And when you change one variable, you have to make sure there's a meaningful counterbalance to that. Like if you just change one thing and you don't really address the rest of the structure, then you're going to be ruined. But let's just take this whole character one obstacle thing, right? Yeah. The romantic comedy follows this formula to the T. And rom-coms have consistently done really well at the box office. It's almost exactly the same story. And I'll prove it to you right now. Okay? Romeo and Juliet, two lovers, they can't get together. Why? Because their parents hate each other. Well, in 2024, no one cares what their parents think anyway, so that story's not as relevant today. So two characters love each other, but they can't because why? Because the girl's gay or the guy's gay. That's more relevant today. Yeah. Okay? Boy and girl love each other. They can't because they're interracial. Okay, we can understand that story. They love each other. Why? Because she's a maid and he's a rich guy. That's Made in Manhattan with Jennifer Lopez and Ray Fiennes. They love each other, but they can't because he's a total loser, and that's like Shipwrecked, I think. They love each other, but they can't because she owns an independent bookstore and he owns a mega bookstore chain. I think that's called You Got Mail. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? It's literally the same story structure, but we're fascinated because we're trying to figure out, do they get together or do they not? What is La La Land? It's the same thing over and over again. And they just change the variables, and their creative comes not in changing the structure, but just changing the variables. That's how this works.
It's always the same structure. You back to the three words, which is there's always a character, there's a want, and then there's obstacle. And that is exactly what you just mentioned about, different characters. And I think about rom-com as well, following that to the T, which is interesting. You talk about being creative in the process. And I think you have a quote somewhere that says the idea of being original is both ignorant and arrogant. Ignorant because you don't know what come before, and arrogant because you think it was all you. And I'm curious, do you think there's ever such thing as being original, being creative, or are they all from some data points that we have all, seen before, heard before, from our intuitions?
I think true originality is very, very, very rare, more rare than gold, for a number of different reasons. Because the longer we live, the more likely that you can discover something brand new is diminished. And the longer we live, the more information and influence we have. So the idea to say like this is an original piece of work is kind of dubious to begin with, okay? And I've had this argument when I was in art school, so it's an opinion I've had for a long time, and no one's been able to convince me otherwise. New things can be created via using technology. And so I think there was this like one of these impressionistic paintings that somebody turned into a 3D sculpture. So they transformed the art. So it was an homage to the original artist, but what they did was they made a three-dimensional painting that you can literally walk through, which is pretty wild because like I've always wondered if, so that is an original thought, but it's not wholly original because it's built on somebody else's work. Yeah. So when you take new technology, you can create a very different experience for people. If you do that, there's some semblance of originality, but it's not a wholly original idea. So here's the thought experiment. To say that I have original thoughts means that you were not influenced by anybody, because that's what original means. So that would mean that if you were to grow up in a white room wearing white generic clothing with no media, no magazines, no books, no TV, no internet, and you created something out of nothing, you could say that's original. The question is, would it be any good? So does original make it good, or is it good because it's good? The chances are, because you're basically inventing everything from scratch, it's going to be pretty raw, fairly naive, and most likely a cliche that's been explored 1,000 times already.
Wow.
So even the concept of originality, devoid of influence from others, is kind of a weird concept. That's like more of a philosophical question, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I had a friend, a classmate, who instead of capitalizing the first letter, they made the first letter in the sentence lowercase. Right? So everything was all caps. It's the exact opposite. And the first letter was a lowercase letter. And she's like, this is pretty original. I'm like, yeah, but it's a piece of garbage. It's really illegible, hard to read. It feels like it's screaming at me, and it's like I can't decipher this. Yeah, you can make it difficult to read, but is it good? I don't think so.
So that there is always a difference between, yes, it is original, but then is it useful for humanity? Is it actually good for the people that are interacting with it or using it? Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because I always thought that, being original just means that you're creating something, you might be using different parts, of the world, and you're just coming up with something new, even though it is existing part. And that's kind of what people would call as original. And as long as it's not a direct copy of something.
Yeah, I mean, think about it too. Like, let's just say we don't have to be so extreme in the white room and no influences. Let's say you created something and you've never looked at anything else. But somewhere across the world, somewhere in Japan or the United States or France or wherever, somebody's been doing that for a long time. You're like, hey, I did this brand new thing that's original. And then everybody's like, this has been done by the French artist, blah, blah, for like 1,000 years. They're like, what? I didn't know that. So what does that even mean? So I think, I hope I'm not quoting him incorrectly here, but Paul Rand, the late great American graphic designer, pioneer in design, he said, like, don't try to be original, just try to be good, because being good is really difficult.
Yeah.
Everybody's so fascinated by trying to be original. You know what? If you do something that's good and you've learned how to do this over time, you might add to the canon of what original content there was. And it's okay to contribute something to this long lineage of ideas, and we stand on the shoulders of giants, as they say. So I'm okay with that. Like, I find that there's things that I say that I think, you know what, I don't know where I got this thought from. I just have it, and I put it out there, and then I Google that, and there's some other weird version that sounds like it. So, like, I think there's this interesting thing that maybe as a civilization, there are certain ideas that we find and we discover almost at the same time. And that's how movements begin. Like, that's how Cubism begins. George Braque and Picasso kind of are exploring this multidimensional perspective thing, and they had their own take on it. So they co-create Cubism. And it's stronger because there's two people, not just one person.
Yeah.
And the Impressionists and the abstract expressionists, they're all exploring similar ideas, living in New York City, playing around with things, going to each other's studios. Like, I love what you're doing. I got to do my version of it. And then they create these movements, and then we get to appreciate the products of their creativity because they share these ideas. That's why there's almost always an enclave of artists somewhere that becomes the pulse of creativity within a given city.
Yeah. What is the relationship between, or is there even a relationship between being creative and being original? Is there a difference, you think, or is it just a difference in naming?
I think there's a big difference because we can be creative. And creative is, we've found a connection between two things that don't belong together. I can use more complicated art school academic language, like to find the connection between two disparate things. And that is a difficult thing to do. When you say something like something is like something else, you're making that connection. And if you're the first person to see that, people are like, wow, that's really cool. That's very creative. And that is fairly original, not in the technical definition of this, but one of the best ads I've ever seen, one of the best ads, was for a convertible BMW. And I think it was one of these sporty cars where there's only two seats, a cabriolet, I believe they call that. Yeah. And they photographed it from the profile, like from the side view. It was lit in such a way that it looked like a shark with a fin, because there were these side air vents that looked like gills of a shark. So somebody staring at this car was like, my gosh, this car is fast, it's sleek, it cuts through the wind like a hot knife, like it moves. Like, oh my God, if we just light this car a very specific way and rake it so that it tapers towards the end, and then you see side vent gills, and then we just see the part of the windshield that looks like the fin of a shark, without cheating too much, we can make a car look like an animal. And that's really cool. So that we're like, and that ad won a ton of awards. If you're not familiar with this, just Google BMW shark convertible ad, and this thing will pop up and you look at it, you're like, damn, that's smart. And here's the thing. When we see something like this, it's written about in A Smile in the Mind, right? A book on creative ideas and wit. Yep. What's happening here is the creator of these ads or these concepts create a puzzle for us to solve. If it's too difficult to solve, we're like, I don't get it. If it's too easy to solve, we say, oh, what a cliche, so obvious. But when it's the right combination of hard and easy to figure out, we put it together in our mind, and it's this moment of delight. A smile happens in our mind. We're like, oh, I'm in on the joke. I'm smart enough to decipher the puzzle you gave me, and I feel better about myself. I feel like there's a secret society between the creator of the concept and the consumer of the concept that only the people who get it will get it. And it's an awesome feeling. So as designers, as advertisers, as marketers and storytellers, we try to create that pleasurable moment where the puzzle is solved by the person looking at it. And when we see a good idea, we almost always say, oh my God, that's clever. How smart. So obvious that I never could have come up with it. But when you see it, you cannot unsee it again. And that's what we're trying to do.
And that's being creative.
That's being creative.
Looking things differently. One of the things that goes around in Silicon Valley, at least in some of the circles that I hear, is that, people take psychedelics to be creative. Yeah. And it's an interesting question. I mean, you are a full-blown creative, obviously in my eyes and a lot of people's eyes. What are your views on psychedelics unlocking new creativity, and why do people talk about that? If you can, if you have some stories you want to share around that, I'm just so curious as to why people look at that experience and say that it enhances creativity.
Okay. There are all kinds of psychedelics like acid, like mushrooms, psilocybin, ayahuasca, and things like that can make your mind trip. Okay. Some of them have some benefits. And I just want to fully disclose, I'm open-minded about this, but I've never used any drug in my life. I've never drank any alcohol ever. And I've wondered this myself. Okay. Now we know that the spectrum of light is wide, but the visible spectrum is actually quite small. That's why animals can sense fear in you, because they can see you in a spectrum of light and energy that we cannot see. They have infrared vision. They can see at night. We cannot, obviously. They have all kinds of abilities to see things. So what some of these psychedelics allow us to do is to see temperature, like a heat map, like predator vision. And if you see people like that, and you can see their blood vessels in their body, you notice that people who take acid and are artists, they paint these paintings and they could see through, like, could see their eyeballs and all their vessels. And it's people who can paint similar pictures. So I think that's what they're seeing. Now, my concern is this, and my friend said, hey, Chris, consider doing mushrooms. It'll allow you to see a connection between all living things and appreciate greatness in the details of things, right? Now, here's the problem. I talked to my wife about this. She's interested in trying some of these things, but she's like, maybe you shouldn't. I'm like, I like how my brain sees the world. I like my ability to observe things and to notice things. And I'm concerned that by taking it, I will lose that ability. I might gain something else, but I'm not ready to lose what I already have. And that's the thing. So I'm not here to pass judgment on anybody who wants to try anything, because it might make you more grounded and rooted in what it is that you're experiencing. But I make it to be a mindful practice on a daily basis to appreciate and also to acknowledge and understand and look at everything through the most critical eye that I have. And I'll tell you the reason why. And I'll answer the question about nature versus nurture right now. I'll integrate into this answer, okay? Sure. Which is this, is that creative people have an ability to see things that non-creative people cannot. They've attuned their senses to be very sensitive to noticing things. That's only part one of being a creative person. Part two is from their observations, they were able to connect things that other people can't see. They can literally see things that have yet to have happened. And I love Brian Collins. He's given talks about the future of design. And he says this. He says there are multiple futures, not a singular future, and we can shape what the future is going to become. There's an infinite number of possibilities here. He goes, designers by nature are futurists because they imagine and rehearse multiple futures and pick the most optimal one. I've never heard it described like that before. I was like, that's profound. I love that. That's what we're doing. So when we look at a blank piece of paper and your clients are asking you to design an identity system for them, quite literally, that's what you're doing. You're imagining a bunch of shapes, letter forms, configurations, inspired by all the things you've noticed about other logos and about other forms. And you're like, I'll try this one. I'll try this one. I'll try this one. And you're like, this is the most optimal one. Sadly, your inability to articulate this, your inability to talk about why this is relevant and present in a way that's compelling to the client makes them say, well, I don't want this optimal future. I want this other one that you haven't thought about. Yeah. That's the friction that exists between clients and artists and vendors, right? And that's a problem we can solve for a different day. So when we feel like we're not creative, when we have a creative block, it's because we don't have enough data points. We haven't observed enough. We haven't learned enough. So we're just using too few crayons in the box to render an image. And that's a fear that a lot of creative people have. If you didn't have a great mentor, if you're not some autodidact, like some self-learning genius, and you didn't go to a great school, there's a good chance that you might be trying to render the world in 24 colors. You know, like when I was a kid, we didn't have a lot of money, so we had a box of crayons. It was like 24, I think, from Crayola. And whenever we'd go to the supermarket, it's not like a lot of money. I don't even know why I put this constraint on myself. But you'd get that big jumbo box, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's the mega jumbo box, which is like 256 and then 124 or whatever. And I go, like, God, one day I will be able to buy that. So I look at that as a metaphor for us. If you're able to observe textures, materials, colors, juxtaposition, how things are connected, how they're built and finished, you have more crayons to work with. You have a greater capacity to render the world. And this is an important thing because what you're trying to do is to articulate a vision of the future. Right? So back in the day, when I was trying to draw people, which is generally what people do with crayons, you know, you render things, you draw the house, you draw the dogs, you draw your mom and dad. And you know what? Because we're all different shades of brown, trying to mix red, yellow together to create the right shade, it's like just shades of orange, basically. But when you have the flesh tone color and a 3 shades of mocha and coffee, you can sit there and you can blend with a little bit of yellow and you can achieve the right hue and shade. And that's the vision that you had in mind. So are we born creative or can it be nurtured? I believe we're all born creative, but we just lose our ability to be creative. And the nurturing part, and I have to believe in this because I grew up relatively unsophisticated, uncultured in art and design, and I was able to learn it through self-education and through formal education. So I exposed myself to as many things as possible. Something that you don't know about me, Felix, is this. Sorry, let me finish this thought. I'll land the plane, okay? Is that for many years since I was in junior high, even before junior high, I would go to the library and I would look at magazines. So when I was younger, I'd look at Dynamite or Highlight, you know, the magazines for kids. There's all these activities. I would look at Sunset Magazine. I would look at like Ranger Rick and those kinds of things. Field and Streams, and I was getting a little older, or Outdoor Fieldsman or something. I would just look at boating magazines and car magazines. What I was doing was I was augmenting my reality with this pictorial representation of reality that I can consume safely from where I was pre-internet, and I could expose myself to many things and observe many things. So I was looking at Better Homes and Garden. I was looking at Elle Decor, and I was consuming this like voraciously. I would look at advertising magazines and just look at what are the award-winning campaigns look like. And when you consume enough with a very particular eye, You elevate your sense of taste and style. You understand the palette in which you can draw from, and it makes you a more creative person. So can it be taught? Can it be nurtured? For sure. But most people don't have that discipline and don't have someone to guide them along the process.
This is such a great story because a lot of it, as you mentioned, I think your answer is that yes, it can be nurtured and you have to have the discipline and I think the right environment for you to almost like, back to the point of discipline, carry yourself forward, which is interesting because it brings me to a question that I didn't put into my paper, which is that if you had this exposure earlier in your life, or if you had more of this exposure, I mean, there is always a version of more. Do you think that there is a level of privilege to being creative in today's society?
Is there a level of privilege?
Because the reason why I asked that is because you mentioned that, hey, look, creativity is you look at different things, perspectives, different experiences, you combine all of that. And if you're more privileged, obviously you have more access to different experiences. Do you think it plays a part?
It plays a part, but I'll say this. Some rich people have the worst taste in the world. And you can see it with the buildings that are built and their lavish apartments with gold, inlay, everything. They don't understand anything because they speak the language of money. So the idea that you have more resources would lead to being creative and having good taste, it's a good concept, but in reality, it's not. Look at all the nouveau riche people in China. Actually look at the nouveau riche people in any country. And you know what they do is they copy the images of success without understanding it. That's why they get gold-plated Bugattis and they walk out with like shiny silver metallic pants and snakeskin boots. And I'm like, I know they cost a lot of money, but it just shows me how much you don't know. Like the way you carry yourself, the eyeglass that you bought, and the way that you take care of your body. So lots of rich people don't have any taste at all. In fact, some of the most famous people, celebrities, need stylists. The idea of stylist is confusing to me. Right. Because you're already rich and famous. Why don't you have any style? Because you know what? You don't spend any time trying to put yourself together. You haven't learned the language of clothing and fashion and proportions and textures and silhouettes. You just haven't. So when you see celebrities walk on the street and those tabloid magazines take pictures of you and you're like, that person's a hot mess. It's because their stylist didn't tell them what to wear to people with taste. And you can see that. I don't want to name any names, but it's easy to go up and down the list of, I'm not even talking about B-level celebrities. I'm talking about A-level celebrities that you think look so good on the screen or so stylish, have such charisma. Outside, they look like garbage. So you can be rich and famous, have access, and still have bad taste. It's because you haven't been able to make that connection.
Thanks for sharing that. And yeah. I know that, we have a lot of people has a lot of questions on this, but you're an expert in business and at least the business of design. And I think you're one of the best in the world. Your YouTube video, I recently went to check it out. Pricing, Design Work, and Creativity, the guide, is your top video of all time. I think it's about 4.5 million views today. It's 3 million more views than your second trending video. Why do you think people watch that so much? Why do you think people want to price their, learn about pricing their creativity so much, through your video? What draws people to that? I mean, you obviously have a lot of stories, so I'm curious, why do you think people are particularly drawn to this subject?
Okay. I can tell you the theory behind this, but obviously if I knew how to do this every single time, every video we would make would have 4 million views. But there is a special moment in time when all the right variables were in place to make this video popular. And it is our most viewed video by far. But the cut down of this video has 40 million views, the short. And the recut of the same video as a short has 20 million views. So the combined view on this thing is ridiculous. It's like over 64 million views. It's the number one video which people recognize me for. Like literally on the street, like, I know you. I've seen you before. I'm like, have you? I play innocent. Like, have you? I don't know. And they're like, yeah, logo guy, pricing, right? I'm like, yeah, that's me. Okay, cool. We know each other. So from the airport to the embassy or to wherever else on the street to the fast food server, that's a video that people know. Why did it hit? Why did it strike a nerve with people? Not that talking about money or pricing and negotiation is exciting, because there are universal concepts in that video that have grown way beyond designers. Because I don't even know if there are like 4 million designers or 40 million designers out in the world. But people in the trade, like plumbing and tile work, they watch this video and they're like, damn, that's a much better way of understanding this. And you presented, when I say you, I mean I presented an idea that was a take on an existing belief that they had that challenged it in a way that they felt was either going to make them really angry or to reframe their relationship with charging for the hour and understanding that charging based on time is a dumb idea. We didn't get into the theory of it, but what happened was I had the right sparring partner to work with. My friend Jung, who used to teach, he's since passed away in the video, rest in peace. He's the right kind of person that dances with me that I haven't been able to find. Someone who is very passionate, who's emotional, who's angry, but can't figure it out either, who doesn't have great logic, makes for the great counterbalance of the two of us. And we know each other in real life. We were friends before he passed, and we can go at each other full-throated, like no punches pulled. And what people got to see was a pretty good sparring match between two people who had very different opinions of things. Because people who I do role plays with who capitulate too quickly, they're like, oh, that's a very reasonable argument. You're right, Chris. But the fact that he was so weird about his answers, not trying to be, but just because he is, it made it such good content. You're like, give me the bag of popcorn. Like, where's this going? And those videos tend to be the best. So we're in a real environment with a real group of people. He's passionate and angry. I'm passionate and angry. He's not easy to convince. Neither am I. And we're going to go at it. And what happens is magic. Now, if I have enough stubborn, angry, sometimes ignorant people, every video will be 4 million views.
Wow, I was just thinking that, now that you say that, you might get a little bit more stubborn and angry people at your workshops. So hopefully we try to invite those type of people to your workshops.
Oh, I love them. Yeah. You know what happens? They literally question me during the workshop. This has happened. I love this because I get to incorporate this. Yeah. Wow. They're like, Chris, I don't believe what you're saying. I'm like, cool. Okay, let's go at it. What's your belief? And I said, and they'll say something and they'll directly challenge me in the opposite way. And I say to them, little cheeky, you know how this is going to end, right? Like, no, what do you mean? Everybody in the room giggles. And I said, and at that time it was like Dave. I'm like, Dave, make sure you have a tight shot on this person and a shot on me. Let's make sure they're mic'd up because this is the video that will get me 1 million views. I thank you in advance. Please continue with the argument. And they're like, never mind. I retract my statement.
Oh, God. They back down too easy. They
back down because they know this doesn't end well. Like in the moment, they're like, I made my case. Look at it. I'm so smart. Later, you watch the video, like, oh, my God, I was a jackass. And now I'm helping Chris get 3 more million views on his videos. And I thank you in advance. So if you want to argue with me, I welcome it. I'm not shy of argument. And heaven forbid, if you have a better point of view backed by reasonable, logical explanation, I've learned something. I will change. I'll adopt your opinion.
That is such a cool concept. I mean, to take sort of like a fierce debate into something exciting for people to be a part of and learn from that conversation. I think that is ultimately what it's about. It's obviously, as you mentioned, it's insane. 64 million views almost around the internet just on that one single video alone. What is the key takeaway on the guide, on how to price your design and your creativity? What do you think is the one key takeaway for designers and creatives listening today about pricing if they haven't watched this video yet?
Yes, I'll explain it to you. I've since learned many more things that I can explain in a more nuanced way. Yeah. I want you to do this. This is an experiment that I would probably run in my workshop. I'd ask everybody to do this thing. I say, think about an urgent problem that you would like to have fixed, one that is really bothering you right now. Okay? And then say now you think of the ideal solution for this thing. Is it more or less valuable to you that it takes more or less time? So if it takes more time, is this solution more valuable to you or less valuable to you? They have to really sit there and think about it. In no instance, when you have an urgent, important problem to solve that you care about, that you want it to take more time. In fact, if you could do it quicker, you'll pay more. Okay, let's wrap this in the real world.
Yep.
Because I've been both a buyer and a seller of creative services. Probably more a buyer because I've bought a lot of creative services. But I have a building and I need it to be renovated. And it's projected to take 1 year. I'm going to spend over $1 million renovating this building. And I'm concerned because every day that goes by, I'm paying for a space that I cannot use. It's costing me money. So I have it written in the contract, the project must be finished on this date. For every day that you're late, you will pay me now. Unless I do something that changes the scope of this, and you need to tell me in advance, this is written into the contract, it will be done at this time. And in fact, if you could deliver it earlier, I'll give you a bonus. Get the job done. And so the person says, right, I got it. Signs the documents. I award the job. A year later, we have a space. Because what is their incentive? Well, it's a fixed fee bid, meaning they're not charging me hourly.
Yep.
So the longer they drag this out, the more it's going to cost them. So what they need to do is organize a project in such a way that they have all the tradespeople just coming in at clockwork, and all the materials and all the decisions that need to be made are done well in advance of when they need them. And the shipment accounts for, or the project management accounts for delays and potential permitting issues, all of that. I want it to be run really well. So in our line of business, what do? We say, well, it should take 4 weeks. And why are we motivated to make it take 4 weeks? Because we can justify it takes longer, more creative human hours. It's going to be of higher quality. So we make the thing take longer. On the other side, the business person, the buyer of the service, like, I don't want it to take 4 weeks. Charge me what you're going to charge me, but can you do it in 2 weeks? In fact, it'll be worth more to me. So what you're asking from the vendor at that point is prioritize my project. I need it done. It's got to be good. I would like it to be done at this time. And for that privilege of you prioritizing me as a client, I would pay you more. So the idea of tying value to time is a really stupid idea. I can't think of many situations where you think something takes longer is more valuable to the buyer. Heart surgery? No. Haircut? Nope. Car wash? No. Waiting in line for a restaurant? No. Concert tickets? No. Almost everything you want done faster. And we'll pay a premium for that. Now, the counter argument, Felix, that people like to make to me is like, well, it's always better when I work on it longer. You get a higher quality product.
Yeah.
In some instances, yes, but in most instances, no. I'll give you an example. Here's the last example, and I think I need to get off this call pretty soon, which is this. Let's put me against a young designer who just graduated from school. Let's say they didn't even go to a good school. Let's say they went to a B-tier school, and they're an average student, okay? You put me in front of a client. The client gives me the brief, gives them the brief. Just by nature, because of my experience, I'm going to ask better questions, pull out some insights from the client, understand their motivations, their goals, their business objectives. The new designer who doesn't know anything is like, oh, you want a logo? No problem. I'm going to make you 400 logos. And I go away in my studio and I think about the solution. And then I devise something I think is going to work. I show them one example and it takes me a mere couple hours to figure out the solution. Because the rendering of the form is not hard for me. It's the coming up with the right idea. That's the hard part. And my experience allows me to come to that conclusion faster. Yeah. And so a week in, I'm already done the presentation. Here it is. This is the work. I thought through the campaign and the life cycle of this logo work. The inexperienced designer is still in research the first week. Hasn't even created anything. Creates 100 ugly ass logos. Shows the client 8 of them. Client likes none of them, is redirected. And time, they're going back and forth. And eventually they land on something that's just whatever. Because through attrition, they're just beaten down by the process. They feel like their vision has been watered down and they're feeling frustrated and angry. In the meantime, the client has already paid me, it's done, has moved on with their business. The client on the other side is just worried like this is taking really long. They're starting to run into deadlines of their own because they need their logo for a number of different applications, and they're still paying. They're like, what am I paying for right now?
Right.
So is more time on something valuable? We're not comparing apples to apples here.
Wow.
If you have two equally skilled people to create something, the idea is if you can get to a faster solution, everybody's happier. In fact, many of you who have a service to offer should pose the question to your prospect and ask them, would this solution be more valuable to you if it could be done in half the time? I only ask because some clients ask for this.
Right.
And if they say yes, you could charge a premium. And you'll learn something new about what people value.
There's so much learning from what you just say. I know that you're running short of time, Chris, and
I got 5 more minutes.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to ask 3 more questions, which I think it's more generic for anyone who might not be a designer as well. But just to wrap up that part, which is really a lot about, it's almost a myth that sometimes longer means higher quality, as you said. In fact, it's quite the opposite. A lot of things, similar quality can be done in a shorter time. It's just really what the buyer wants. And in your case, as you mentioned, it's almost like a sense of opportunity cost is that people always almost want it faster. Haircut, construction, whatever, so on and so forth. So thanks for sharing that concept, Chris. Now, I want to move on to the last 3 questions, which is really more about yourself as a human being and, how you look at the world and obviously, some of the message you want to share to everyone today as well. You have been called many things, obviously, by your community, by the world, design guru, marketing whiz. But as Chris, though, what do you want to be remembered for?
I want to be remembered as a good father. That's all I care about.
Wow.
That I raised 2 boys and gave them the resources they needed in the world without trying to impose my vision of the world on them, to do as little harm to my own children as possible.
Wow.
Do you know the Guru Sadhguru? He's an Indian yogi. Sadhguru. Have you heard of this person before?
I have not heard of Sadhguru.
Okay, he's a beautiful human being. Yeah. He goes, children are born perfect. It's parents who screw it up.
Wow.
He goes, something to the effect of, you're trying to correct the mistakes you've made in your own children. So let's say you didn't get to a good school because you didn't work that hard. You want your children to go to an Ivy League school. Let's say that your parents wanted you to be a doctor, but you just didn't have the passion. Now all of a sudden you want your children to be a doctor. Or you married poorly, or you made bad decisions in your life, and now you're trying to tell your children, don't do this, don't do that. So for some reason, it's like you couldn't get your life together, and now you make your children pay for it. So there's a style of governance. It's called laissez-faire, like hands off. I think that's what it means in French. And I want to raise my children this way. Give them a stable, supportive, loving home, and try to influence them as little as possible as to who they want to be in the world. If they're interested in something, let's support that. If they're not, let's not. We just move around. And outside of some core values, I want nothing for them. And it's a very radical way of parenting, right? I'll share the story really quickly. Yeah. I was telling my cousin who came to visit me recently, I said, you know what? What's the crazy thing is, with our 2 boys, we've never had to tell them to do their homework. We've never checked on their homework. We don't even look at their report card. Yet they get straight A's and they do their homework and they're studious and they care about how well they do in class. Wow. And my cousin's like, because he has a young boy, he's like, how did this happen? He said, well, you set the standard. You don't want to be that kind of parent who's like, do your homework, let me check it. Because then they just do it for you.
Yeah.
I want my children to do it because they want to do it. If they don't want to do it, we'll put them in another school. If they don't want to go to school, we don't go to school. I don't care. And then they find out what they want and they get to be who they want to be. So I'm trying as much as I can to do as little harm to my children as possible. Because everything I try to impose upon them is more about what I want in my life and not what they want. And I think that's how parents F up their children.
Thanks for sharing that, Chris. I hope that your kids, listen to this, once it's out. And the next question I want to ask you is, what is something that you thought was important while you're younger, but no longer think is important for you as you grow older in life?
I'm going to have to rewind the tape up until probably around high school. So in high school, I thought it was really important to be accepted by a social structure because I've always felt like an outsider and there wasn't social or psychological safety for me. And some of my own quote-unquote friends would betray me in weird ways and be mean-spirited. So I had a lot of distrust and I just wanted to feel safe. And I learned that the more I love myself, the more that I find who I am, find my voice in everything that I do, the less I care about what anybody says. And ironically, or paradoxically, the more people accept me. So your desire, your pursuit of acceptance from others makes you less accepted. You giving up this idea of being accepted and wanting that from people makes you more attractive. It's a really weird concept. It's wild.
It is wild. Sounds wild to me. I mean, I probably haven't realized that enough yet as well, Chris, but thanks for sharing that. And now, if you were to put on your wise sage hat, I think you have done that for the past hour. Last question, right? If you were to put on your wise sage hat, what advice would you give to young audience in their 20s to their 30s on creating a life or a career that they can be very proud of?
Okay. I'm going to answer this question. I think I'm going to bookend this whole conversation from where we started to right now. The number one thing, and this is a Picasso quote that I believe so deeply in my heart. I hope I get this right. The purpose of life is to figure out your gift. And the meaning of life is to give it away. So each one of us has a unique set of characteristics or traits that we're born with that we don't fully embrace, and we're trying to chase to be more like other people. So we kind of do disservice to our own gifts. I'm 5'8". I'm not 6'7". If I was 6'7", I'd be doing something different, right? And I have a certain shape, tone of my voice, structure, aesthetics, color of skin, ideas, influences, cultural. I'm Asian American. I love design, comic books, skateboarding. I love mixed martial arts. I like a lot of weird stuff. I'm not shy to talk about money. I love myself fully. And bringing all those aspects together is my gift. So I discovered this kind of along the way when I was able to combine my love for teaching, which I did for 15 years, my love for entrepreneurship, which I ran my company for 23 plus years, and my fascination with design and aesthetics and production and storytelling, which is how I made a living. When I put that together with my genuine desire to help other people, I find my gift. So I combine my skills of teaching, my love for design, my experience in design, my understanding of entrepreneurship, and my desire to genuinely help people. That's where the future is. It's the intersection of these multiple circles, these overlapping circles. So each one of you most likely are denying or running away from your gift because someone told you that's not a good thing. I can't tell you how many times I run into somebody who has the most amazing voice, but they don't use it. Or who writes beautiful poetry, but never publishes it. They literally send me examples. I'm like, has anybody seen this? Like, no. I'm like, why would you withhold this from the world? I don't understand that. So find your gift, share it with the world. And the way we share it with the world is we need to get into creating media. Not for other people, for ourselves. To figure out what it is that we need to know about ourselves. And it's extremely therapeutic. You learn about who you are. And I'll end it on this. Vin Zhang said this, a friend of mine. He says, what is the point of telling stories? You think telling stories is so that we can capture people's imagination and attention. You might be right. You might think of telling stories as a way to market products or make yourself seem more likable. But telling stories, according to him, is our ability to remind ourselves of who we are, such that when people are questioning us, we're affirmed because we've told that story to ourselves. This is my story. This is who I am. It's unshakable. It's undeniable. Yours is just an opinion of me. So we need all to get into the practice of telling stories because it's a dynamic way for people to remember but also because it just reminds us of who we are in case we get lost in the wilderness of people's opinions.
Wow, Chris, thank you so much for ending today's interview with that powerful advice on finding your gifts, letting the world see your gifts as well. And so, Chris, I can't thank you enough for joining us today. I'm sure there's 2,000 people that joined, actually, more than that, 2.5. And I really appreciate you for spending time here and just sharing. I'll reach out to you separately in terms of what kind of links or what would you like to promote. But is there anything that, you want people to check it out from the Futur or from Blind, anything that you might be working on?
Yeah, I would love to say this, is that my mission is to help creative people who struggle with finding their value, their voice. And if you need help, go to thefutur.com. It's spelled Futur. And I would just say this, if you ever see me in the street, please don't be like me. Don't be shy. Come up and say hi. I'd love to shake your hand, to hear a little bit of your story, and if you want, to take a picture with you. So this is why I do what I do. When I hear your story, how you achieve something, your success, a win, it lights me up. It gives fuel to my fire. So please, don't be afraid to share. In other circles, people might condemn you for sharing your wins. I celebrate you, and I salute you, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I'll write my story to you over the weekend as well. And I hope to hear yours, alongside that. So thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
My pleasure. If you want to equip yourself with the right community, training, and resources to take your business to the next level, I want to personally invite you to check out the Futur Pro Group and our membership, specifically created for experienced business owners ready to scale.